Okay, so first and foremost, I've got Zapier pulled up here. You do need to get the invite for Rafi and Zapier, so if you don't have that already, we'll make sure that we include a link down below at the end of this video so that it's easy for you to get that. You'd want to make sure that your Zapier account is up, you've logged in, and then you need to come in here and hit this accept invite button. Once you've done that, you'll actually then have the ability to create a Zapier connection with Rafi. So let's go ahead and get started. As a best practice, it's great if the first thing that you do is hit create and we add a folder. So we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this one Rafi. And you want to make a folder because typically there's at least 3 zaps moving out of Rafi into whatever CRM you might be using. So we're going to go through that today. So first thing we want to do, let's go ahead and create a zap. In the first zap, let's create the triggers that need to come from Rafi into whatever CRM you're using, because those will be the most important ones that you want to do. So we're going to actually start with Rafi being our first step. Let's type in Rafi. You should pull up something that looks like this. We want to make sure that we use the most recent version. Today we're programming on version 2.0, but if this is a video that's shot in the future, there's a good chance we might have an instance that's later than that. So trigger event, as you pull this up, there's actually 3 events that could take place. Number 1 is a live transfer. If it gets claimed, we will then trigger that lead to come into the webhook or ideally your CRM. Second thing that could happen, if no live transfer is claimed, then we will book the appointment. Same thing goes, we're going to send that information over. And the third is lead exported. Now the good news about this is usually there's not a great deal of differences between the way that you would want these things to be layered into your system. It's totally going to be up to you. I'm going to go through all of the fields that are provided so that you can map this stuff out more effectively. Let's start with live transfer claim. Live transfer claim. The next thing we are going to want to do is we're going to want to come into the application. We're going to want to go to settings, and under settings, you'll notice that there's an integrations tab here. We need to create a new API key. So from the API key, we're going to call this Zapier out. I'm going to hit create. I need to copy my API key here, and I need to hit connect a new account, plug my API key in just like this, and then that will actually link up the appropriate account just like that. I'm going to hit continue, and then that will allow me to create a test trigger. So we're just going to grab one of these records. Yep, good enough. We'll continue with that record. Now we need to decide where this is going to go. So depending on whatever CRM you're going to be moving this into would really probably be where this ends up going. For the sake of our test here, we're going to use the my partner's Podio account. And for this one is just going to be creating an item. Now, there's a world where items that are coming from Rafi into your CRM may already exist, i.e. you've already brought a bulk data import into Rafi. We have cycled through that information. We're now providing leads that have been warmed up back to you. In that instance, you may have to have an additional step, which is find contact. I'm not going to get into the minutia of actually what to do in your system outside of just explaining all the parameters that we're passing. So let's go ahead and hit continue. We need to map this out to the right organization, right workspace, and the right application. Fantastic. Whoop. We actually forgot some stuff there. So now we need to pass through name. Now, as I pull this page up here, you're going to notice a couple things. Number 1, we have a full name, or we also have it broken down into first name, last name. You give that to you so that you can easily import just the name as is. Lead source. Lead source, you can carry over lead source from Rafi if you would like to. However, we are not. So you can carry over lead source into Rafi if you'd like to. Here, this is just going to be mapped into the lead source from here. So I might want to come in here and just classify that simply as Rafi. Email, that's a straightforward one. We're going to pass email, of course. We're going to, of course, pass phone. We're going to pass address, and if you'll notice, we have a couple different versions of address. We have city, we have zip, we have state, and of course, if you just type in property address here, it is going to share just the street address. So So now we need to go state. And then zip. Forgot city. Great. So that is going to zap into the system just as we needed to. Let's talk about notes for a minute. So there's a few things that we pass. We pass lead ID that might be applicable from a way that you want to link records between the system. But then down here at the bottom, we pass a lot of information that is probably going to be of more value to you as you are mapping this out and communicating information directly with your team. The number one thing we actually want to show is at the very bottom. That is summary. That's an assessment. So what the summary is, this is an AI synopsis of what has taken place on the lead. This gets updated after every activity. So let's say on the last call, we made contact and the seller, let's just say for whatever reason, they hung up on us. So we would document that information as part of the call summary. Or maybe we figured out that it's going through foreclosure and they need to sell their home in 30 days. So we pass this information. This can be valuable as call notes so that as the lead enters your system, if you've got a member of your sales team, acquisitions team, then picking up the phone to call this person, they've got an easy snapshot of what has taken place most recently as just a quick baseline piece of context to quickly orient yourself on what the conversation is going to look like with the lead. Another interesting thing to pull up is the lead URL. In the event that maybe your team wants to see more context on what has taken place with this particular record, or maybe they actually want to get call transcripts, you can quickly link the lead URL. So actually clicking that link from within whatever environment you're in will actually then take you back into Rafi where you can see that information. Then, of course, you've got lead notes. That's going to be a summary of everything that's taken place, messages and conversation threads. So same thing goes there. And then, of course, you can see there's a couple other maybe lesser known variable fields that we pop in here, like property type or company, if that's, of course, available to us. The last section I want to land on is these 4 areas right here. So number one is qualified. Is qualified tab is only passed as false if we aren't able to reach the end of our qualification guideline. So that would actually be whatever happens in your playbook. If you don't have a playbook on your particular account, that just means that we're going to be asking questions around timeline, price point, motivation. So in the event that somebody calls in and they demand to speak to a member of our team, we gracefully acknowledge that request and we do attempt a live transfer. So in that situation, we're not necessarily qualifying the lead, we're passing them through to a human. That does happen periodically. We also pass this tag of qualification as being true, false. We can also pass desired price, motivation, and timeline, especially if you are in more of a traditional acquisitions room. Those 3 qualifiers usually predicate how urgent or hot that lead might be. So you may want to pass that information along with the lead record itself. Whole point is you can pass a whole number of details from Rafi into your own CRM so that you can effectively make and manage that record how you see fit. And then the last place is appointment date time. You can use this specifically if you have a calendar feature that's hooked into your CRM. Maybe you want to acknowledge the actual date and time that appointment has been set for. Well, we also pass that record along as well. That is the majority of the things that we need to see as we move leads out of Rafi and into a CRM. Once I have fully configured this with my CRM, I'm going to hit continue. I am then going to publish that step. And what I would recommend that you do is come up here to the very top and change untitled Zap. We're going to want to call this one live transfer to CRM. Now, to keep things easy, I'm going to come back up here to the top and I'm going to duplicate that record, or this Zap. And I can keep more or less everything the same, because I want to come down here to live transfer and I want to change this to booked appointment. Now, I could keep everything exactly the same as I'd like, but I may want to add a little bit different record indicating in the CRM how things are coming from Rafi. For example, this one's a booked appointment, not a live transfer, so maybe in the notes field here, I explicitly want to say, this is an appointment. Maybe if there's an appointment field, I'm going to actually pass that appointment date as part of one of those requirements from this particular Zap. If I leave it the same, it's just going to come into the system exactly the same as the last transfer. So it can become confusing unless your team has a process in place to be able to handle. Unless your team has a process in place to be able to effectively handle that data transfer or however you're going to triage that lead otherwise. Once I have finished this lead, I'm going to then come in here. I'm just going to change this one to appointment booked. I'm going to publish. And that one is good to go. And I'm going to repeat this now a third time. This third time is going to be for the third type of trigger event, and that is a lead exported. So in the application, if I have this trigger set up within the system, if I come into a lead and I hit these little three dots up in the top right hand corner, I can export this lead manually over into my CRM. When doing so, it will trigger this Zapier workflow. And again, same thing goes. You may want to just come in here and quickly map this function out to acknowledge the fact that we manually pushed this over versus being an appointment booked. So I can quickly come in here and say manual appointment or manual lead export from Rafi. And I can save changes, do whatever I want to do. And after I hit continue and I publish that, then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say lead export from Rafi to CRM. Fantastic. And now I have all three of those leads set up within my system. Looks like I forgot to save changes on the rename there, but you get the idea. Once all of the trigger events from Rafi take place, once all of the trigger events from Rafi into, let's just say our CRM have been set up, now we can actually move over and set up the trigger events to come into Rafi. And this will be where we actually spend a little bit more time talking about some of the nuance of the platform. So let's create a new Zap within here. And let's just say, for example, that we are going to be bringing in a new lead off of a webhook. Okay, so for now, we're just going to use this catch webhook feature as our connection point. I can go ahead and hit continue. I could hit test trigger. It's not going to grab anything, so we can just go ahead and skip test, and we can continue. Now, if we go into Rafi, grab this record here, choose action, we can do one of three things, right? We can create lead, we could disable prospecting, and we could also find lead. Really, for the most part, especially if this is going to be a new lead coming in the system, it's easy enough to go ahead and hit create lead. Then from the account, we'd want to make sure we either create a new API key through our integrations here if we want to have a separate key for this, right? So we could create a new integration, or we can use that existing API key to actually also bring data in. So there's a bunch of different fields. As we see, we have lead source, and lead source you can map dynamically, or you can enter a new value. Maybe this is an SEO lead coming off of our website. Maybe this is a Facebook ad. Maybe this is a PPC lead. Whatever we would like, we can detail it in here. We can also pass dynamic variables over. If you're mapping a lead that's coming from your CRM into Rafi, you can carry through whatever that lead source is into Rafi so that when it comes back to you, we are effectively mapping that information out. Lead address, that's going to be straightforward. We need that information. lead name. We can collect both first and last name here. It doesn't necessarily need to be parsed out. Email address, phone number, it should be the primary phone number, and then any lead notes. So lead notes is an interesting place for us to park because lead notes will actually get stuffed into the bottom of the lead, really in the form of context. So nothing on that one. Let me pull up an example of this so you see what it looks like. This is an important function to remember because lead notes can actually help Rafi. This is an important feature to remember because lead notes can actually provide extra context to Rafi when making calls. So let's say that we made a note that said, hey, contacted, let's just say we had a note that, hey, this lead had connected with us. They were actually a foreclosure and they've got 30 days in order to close. Well, we can take that information and we can actually use that information during our conversation. So Rafi might pick up on that, says, hey, I know you've got a foreclosure situation going on. Just want to ask if anything has changed. And so it can be a very valuable tool to pass context very quickly to Rafi so that it can make smarter and more effective decisions. Holy moly. Got way down the list here. Okay, so here's an example. Now, this information was passed over from a CRM, so it doesn't look like it's formatted well, but here's the good news. This is AI reading other AI slop, so it's easy for our AI to pick this information up and kind of parse through this and understand what's what. The main things that it'll pick up on are really this, right? Notes on 11/6/2025. The customer hung up, heard the address, and we have got a contact name, blah, blah, blah. So from Zapier, we can add that information as necessary. If we leave it blank, that's totally fine too. That lead will enter our system as a completely blank lead that has a lot of opportunity behind it. Then there's enable SMS, only express lead approval. So yes, make sure that is enabled as true if we have opt-in. And if it's not truly opted in, just make sure you acknowledge that as false. That's to keep us A2P compliant. Enable prospecting, that is just simply the nature of once the lead is in the system, we are going to engage. So this little toggle will be flipped. If for whatever reason you wanted to bring a lead into Rafi, but you did not want prospecting to start, you would just hit false. That would bring a lead in and it would just really just sit there. If you want a notification to go to the team as new leads come in, you can hit true. For the most part, you're going to want to hit false there because you don't want to overwhelm your team or yourself with notifications that don't have a lot of value. And the last thing is this is priority field. So let's park here for 10 seconds. Is priority is a way of communicating with Rafi if this lead is of highest and so is priority is a way of communicating with Rafi is if this lead is the number one priority. So meaning lead enters the system, we are going to treat it like a brand new fresh lead. We are immediately going to begin calling, texting, and emailing with that lead to ideally get them on the phone. If I select false, all that means is then we'll cycle into the prospecting queue. So the next time that we hit that lead may not be until a few hours later until we've actually created a formal strategy for it, or until the next day if you're already outside of business hours. So for example, if you were to load a lead, or let me give you this example, if you actually load a list of leads into Rafi, the list does not actually get classified as priority. It will probably get hit later that day as long as you're within normal business hours. But let's say it's 10 o'clock at night and you load a list. That list will not be prospected on and actually until the following day during business hours. Is priority allows us to step outside of those constraints of business hours, just saying, yes, I understand that it's 11 o'clock at night, but this is coming off of a PPC ad. I want to make sure that we get a hold of this person as quickly as possible to ideally book an appointment. So we can go ahead and hit is true. Once this information enters our system, then we are off to the races. For now, I'm just going to skip test. We could publish that and we could just call this one PPC into Rafi. Easy peasy. We'll go ahead and publish that. And same thing we did before, let's duplicate this so we can show you what a different configuration might look like with some of the other triggers. So from Rafi, let's say I have a lead that's in my CRM that my team is calling on and Rafi is also calling on. And for whatever reason, maybe my team gets a hold of that lead and I want to make sure that activities within Rafi cease to exist, meaning I don't need to continuously call this person over and over again, knowing that my team got them on the phone. So from the setup tab, I can do this thing that says find lead. From the find lead tab, we can find lead based on phone number, email address, or street address. And once we find that information, we can return the list of results here. I would then want to create an additional step within Rafi where I would want to disable prospecting. So I come in here, I can grab the lead ID from this previous find lead category, and I can deactivate prospecting, meaning from the platform, from the application, this will no longer be active, just meaning Rafi's no longer going to continuously call, email, and text your leads. So that's pretty much it. That is how easy this is to get up and running. As you can see, the functionality is very straightforward to get leads into the system, getting leads out of the system, and then of course passing all of the data and the context along with those leads so that we can either effectively manage them or pass that information along to your team. So hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below.